Prepare to be terrified with these 3 truly disturbing winter horror stories. Story 1: The Thing in the Snow. They say winter nights can hush the world, but on this night, the silence felt alive, watching, waiting. I used to adore the Montana wilderness in winter. There's a calming stillness when the snowfall blankets everything, muting the distant hum of civilization. My cabin, tucked miles away from the closest neighbor, was my personal haven. But all that serenity shattered one January evening when a creeping sense of unease clawed its way into my bones, like the storm itself had a heartbeat and it was pounding at my door. The wind had howled all day, rattling the shutters and piling drifts halfway up the windows. By twilight, that howling abruptly died. It was unsettling, as though even nature feared to make a sound. I flipped on the porch light out of habit, scanning the endless white. That's when I noticed them, footprints in the freshly fallen snow, trailing from the darkness of the tree line straight up to my back door. My own prints from earlier in the day had long been buried under new layers of powder, so these were recent. I had to force myself to breathe. I approached the window and pressed my forehead to the glass, squinting through the soft glow. The footprints were deep, uneven, like something had dragged a foot with each step. Curiosity battled with dread in my mind. A lost hiker, an injured wanderer? Yet the sinking feeling in my gut told me no, whoever made those prints hadn't moved normally, and why come to my door without knocking? Then, out of nowhere, a muffled knock rippled through the cabin walls. 3 slow, deliberate taps, like an invitation from the dead. My breath caught in my chest. I strained to see movement outside, but the falling snow devoured all details. Slowly, I fumbled for my phone, each second amplified by the pounding of my heart. A single bar of signal flickered. I called the sheriff's office, ignoring the voice in my head that asked, "What if it's already inside?" The phone rang twice before static crackled. I barely heard the dispatcher say, "Hello," when the power cut out, plunging me into blackness. My phone screen glowed faintly, reflecting my own terrified eyes. The heater's hum died, and the quiet that replaced it was almost claustrophobic. My next breath felt thick in my lungs, like the air itself had turned cold and heavy. Clicking on my flashlight, I slid off the couch and tiptoed down the hall. The narrow beam revealed swirling dust motes in the gloom. I was trying to reach the breaker panel when I heard a door hinge squeak from the bedroom, metal on metal, slow, as if someone was gently testing the threshold. My knees went weak. How could anyone get in with all the doors locked? A silhouette stood in the doorway, misshapen and hunched, its limbs too long, its frame too still. I wanted to scream, but fear locked my voice in my throat. The figure took a single step forward, and I noticed a dripping sound, like melting icicles hitting the floor. Snow slid off its shoulders, forming a small puddle on the floorboards. Then I heard a ragged inhale, as though it was drawing in the warmth of my presence, feeding on my fear. I staggered backward, the flashlight beam trembling. The thing's face caught the light for a moment, eyes dark as cavities, skin unnaturally pale. Its mouth parted. No words, just a rattling breath that made my stomach tighten. In one desperate motion, I threw my shoulder against the back door, unlatched it, and stumbled out into the blizzard. My boots vanished in waist-deep snow, but adrenaline propelled me forward. I thought I heard a scraping noise behind me, as if it was following in the footprints I left behind. Snow pelted my cheeks and stung my eyes, yet I pressed on until I collapsed at a neighbor's porch, panting, unable to form coherent sentences. When the sheriff finally arrived, they found my cabin empty and locked. No sign of forced entry. The footprints at my back door were there, but they faded after a few yards, swallowed by gusts of powder. Inside, the power had returned on its own. The only oddity, a puddle of half-melted snow in the bedroom near the window. No footprints, no shattered glass. Now, each time the temperature plunges and the snow piles high, I see those uneven footprints in my nightmares. If you ever hear a knock in the hush of winter, don't open the door. Something in that endless white might be waiting to step inside.
Story 2: The Man Who Smiled. He was little more than a silhouette against the whirling snow, but that smile, God, that smile, burned into my mind like a brand. I was driving home for the holidays, an 8-hour trip through miles of frozen, empty highways. Snow fell thick, covering the road, making it harder to see. That's when I spotted him. A man standing by the roadside, barely visible in my headlights. He wore nothing but a thin jacket. No car in sight, no footprints in the snow behind him. Just standing, waiting. I hesitated but stopped a few feet ahead. Rolling down my window just an inch, I called out, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" He didn't move, didn't speak. He just smiled. Not a grateful smile, not a nervous smile. A wide, stretching, too big smile like he was waiting for something. When I glanced in the mirror again, he was in my back seat. My scream lodged in my throat. My grip tightened on the wheel, my knuckles white as I forced myself to look in the rearview mirror again. The seat was empty. I slammed my foot on the gas, heart hammering as my car fishtailed on the icy road. My breaths came in short gasps, my mind scrambling for an explanation. Had I imagined it? Was the storm playing tricks on me? I drove without stopping for miles, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. It wasn't until I reached a gas station on the outskirts of town that I finally pulled over. My hands shook as I stepped out, desperate for the cold air to clear my head. The station was deserted except for an old man behind the counter. I walked in, rubbing my arms to shake off the lingering chill. "Long drive?" the man asked, barely looking up from his newspaper. I hesitated. "Yeah, you could say that." He nodded knowingly. "Storm's bad tonight. Dangerous to stop for anyone on the road." Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. "Why do you say that?" He finally looked at me, his eyes dark and serious. Because sometimes they aren't people. A shiver crawled up my spine. I turned to leave, but then I saw it. Faint, foggy fingerprints on the inside of my rear windshield. I never drove alone at night again.
Story 3, Footsteps on the Roof. This next story is a bone-chilling tale that will horrify you. It was a Christmas Eve that now haunts my dreams. You know how snow can make a home feel cozy, unless the crunch of unseen footsteps drags across your roof, reminding you that not all visitors bring cheer. My sister and I always spent Christmas Eve at our family's lodge, a sprawling log home set against a frozen lake. We drink cocoa, decorate the tree, and wait for our parents to arrive the next morning. It was a warm tradition in the dead of winter, at least until one year when the warmth was swallowed by a chilling terror neither of us could forget. We weren't alone. The storm that night was relentless, wind howling through the trees like a distant scream. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the wooden walls, but it did little to warm the uneasy feeling creeping over me. My sister sat curled on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket, her eyes glued to a Christmas movie we had seen 100 times before. But I wasn't watching. I was listening. A sound, faint but distinct, scraping across the roof. It wasn't the wind. It was something heavier. I muted the TV. My sister turned to me, confused. "What?" she asked. "Shh." We listened. Silence. Then from above, a soft but deliberate thud, a slow dragging sound, like something shifting its weight, crawling just above us. My stomach clenched. "Probably a branch," I whispered, more to myself than to her. But I didn't believe it. She didn't either. The scraping resumed, this time closer to the chimney. Then with a sudden jolt, something knocked against the roof vent, hard. My sister grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. We weren't imagining this. I grabbed the poker from the fireplace and crept toward the nearest window, peering out into the swirling snow. The night was dark, the snow reflecting only the dim glow of our porch light. I saw nothing, but then a shadow shifted, just beyond the light's reach. A hand, long, too thin, gripped the edge of the roof. I stumbled back. My sister let out a choked gasp. "What was that?" Before I could answer, the sound above changed. No more dragging, no more scraping. Now it was footsteps. Slow, deliberate, pacing above us. Then, with horrifying certainty, I realized the footsteps weren't leading away. They were heading toward the attic entrance inside the house. A loud thump echoed from the ceiling, the attic hatch shuddering. We ran, out the door into the freezing night, snow biting at our bare feet. We sprinted to the car, fumbling with the keys, our breaths coming in panicked gasps. Just as I yanked the driver's side door open, I made the mistake of looking up. A figure stood on the roof, silhouetted against the snow, watching, waiting. The car engine roared to life, and I slammed it into reverse, speeding away from the cabin. The figure jumped off the roof in unholy quickness. It stood in front of the cabin, its long fingers curled, looking like it was waving goodbye. When we returned with the police the next morning, the attic hatch was open. Snow had drifted inside, forming a perfect circle beneath the entrance. There were no footprints leading up to it, no sign of forced entry. But in the frost-covered glass of the upstairs window, one word had been traced by a finger: soon. We never spent another Christmas at the cabin.